Lots to catch up on.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So this is an original show. It's an original show. Last 10 days or so, they have not been original shows. And when I'm on vacation, I guess I'll probably get out of the business. When on vacation, I go, I got nothing to say about that. Ted just reported some, I got nothing to say about that. But I got plenty to say about a whole bunch of things, so we'll catch up. No sense going backwards. Let's just kind of stay kind of contemporary. Great to have you in. Ted Nesi is on board because I need him to brief all of us on all this stuff that went on this week. And Ted and I were casually discussing that it was actually a busier July, dead after 4th of July week than usual. So stuff to do. And of course, His Honor continues to beat whatever drum he decides he's going to beat on any given second interval. Yep. So he's doubling down on the idea that what he said originally was fine. Here's the network's coverage of it at press time.
As President Trump stepped out for golf this morning, he stepped up his attacks on Democratic women.
This is our squad!
Many of whom at a conference on Saturday criticized the commander-in-chief for his policies toward migrants at the southern border. All in attendance were American-born, except Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar from Somalia. Her family sought asylum here when she was a child.
I understand the kind of choices that some of these families are faced with.
Attacking progressive Democratic congresswomen from other countries, the president wrote, "Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came?" House Speaker Nancy Pelosi shot back, tweeting, "Make America Great Again has always been about Make America White Again," adding diversity is our strength.
She's right. She's right about that. He does enough to I didn't. You know, about the time we were taping the show, and you should know we tape in the early afternoon, he was saying something along the lines of, well, you didn't tell him to go back forever. I just go back and, like, double down, check, take a visit, Holiday Inn Express, I'm sure they have one, that kind of, or I have a Trump hotel there, you should stay there and check on things. Clearly, he is a professional dog whistler. Clearly, he has such bigotry that runs through his bones that he puts himself in this position joyfully all the time because then he likes working himself out of it because it's entertainment for him. The Republicans sit there and go, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, and they're in a box because the progressive politics of those particular congresswomen, for most of us, are not palatable. They're not. But because you say something like go back, which is go back, you take yourself out of the intellectual argument with them. And that's the problem, that America's 10, 12, 14, 16% of the voters who could leave him and choose someone else are probably fed up with, and I don't think he gets that. Although the latest polling data that says Joe Biden could easily beat him, the president calls fake news, fake polling, and you know what? Because everyone screwed it up in 2016, you'll have a lot of people believing that he's right about that, and I'm not sure. In the meantime, that story kind of covers what he really did this weekend, which is to telegraph an ICE raid in cities all across America that never happened. And what I can't figure out, but my guess is that because he telegraphed it, it didn't happen. Blow off your own big toe. Let's come home. Let's talk about the stuff that's been going on here. This is interesting. In fact, at press time, I just heard, in fact, I could play it off my phone if that would be bad television, right? But the governor just had a press gaggle, and amongst the things she had to respond to was this particular story. And Ted would know this because he is so engaged in the daily goings out of the State House. We've got this thing between, welcome, by the way.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Welcome back.
It was a thing. So it was kind of a traditional slow week, busy week?
Yeah, it's been just a newsy July. A bunch of the reporters have been saying that to each other. There's just been a lot. You've got the Providence schools discussion that continues. You've got this battle with IGT and Twin River that's playing out. The president never stops making headlines, even if that's a step removed from the day-to-day of a state-level reporter like me. It feels like a lot going on.
Okay, let's dig into this IGT Twin River thing. Couple of things I think we need to establish. Twin River, most people don't know this. Twin River is really a paid custodian of gaming of the lottery. When they became casino authorized, they were able to run their own games, the table games, as we say. But they are cut a commission for the service of providing those lottery terminals, meaning the video the slots, as people would call them, that aren't slots, the machines. Most people don't own that.
Yeah.
So we have to establish that for the conversation. IGT is one of what, 3 companies?
Basically 3 big ones
in the world that make this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, the machines when you go in and you press the buttons, and whether it's Wheel of Fortune or whatever, that's IGT and its 2 rivals.
Right.
Formerly G-Tech, we should also remind people.
So how long has their deal been on?
They had the current IGT/G-Tech deal was signed by Governor Kachiri back in 2003, and it's
IGT
20 years.
is the new name for G-Tech.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, they're in mergers and mergers and mergers, and now IGT, same tower downtown that was the G-Tech tower, is now the IGT tower.
So its expiration is now.
A couple years out, and they need to start, I think it's a combination of things. They need to start thinking about the investments they would be making in some of the systems, because these are all actually pretty high tech, or fairly high tech, all these game systems. Right. Are we going to be your provider still, in the next couple years? And then IGT, again, after all these mergers, is now, its headquarters is in London, but it's even more, it's controlled by a conglomerate in Italy. So the executives of IGT who are based in Providence are answering to officials in Europe who are going to ask, well, why are you in Rhode Island? Do you need to stay in Rhode Island? And I think part of what has driven this is them saying, hey, we need to make a case to stay here if we're going to be staying here. That was certainly part of their argument to the governor about why they should come up with a new deal, which is now what's on the table.
And there's more than 1,000 jobs.
They say about 1,100 right now.
And
permanent.
they're not cheapo jobs.
No, they say $100,000 average on salary. It's people in the tower, and then they also have a VLT production facility down in West Greenwich.
They produce the computer system as well.
Yes.
That the lottery runs, the Kenos and the Quick Picks and
your
the
scratch tickets and
all
your
that stuff.
Powerball. Yes. Yep.
And reportedly, that thing is a tired old machine.
Yes.
Okay, so where does the connection, have you followed this? Where's the connection between, if anybody's followed it, Ted has, what's the connection between the basic lottery computer service, not unlike the Deloitte problem,
Yep.
right? I don't know that it's gotten to the level of dysfunction. I haven't heard that the lottery is not paying people on time, right? But it's a worn out system. They have a responsibility to provide that commensurate with their presence at the Twin River and Tiverton facilities?
They were, my understanding, some of this does predate my own time here, but my understanding after reading up on it is part of how the big 2003 G-Tech deal to get the tower built and have the companies here and keep the company in the state, they basically threw all the state's lottery contracting for the technology at G-Tech. They said you can have the VLTs in what was at the time Lincoln Park, I guess, right? It would have been pre-Twin River, the name change. You can run that, all those systems for the scratch tickets and the quick picks and everything else. And in exchange for that, which is fairly lucrative year after year, worth about $50 million a year to IGT, they say right now, you'll be based here, you'll have this minimum number of jobs you have to make, etc. So that's the contract they have. It's a master contract for all lottery and game services.
What is their responsibility in the proposed new contract? To continue same?
They have to continue doing what they do now. They have to make, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but some tens of millions of dollars of investment over time, etc.
Were they required? There's 2 more years left on their deal.
3?
3. Okay, my mistake. seems to me that they have a responsibility to upgrade the computer system that runs the lottery in the midst of the current deal, correct?
That is one of the questions that's bubbling to the surface now. There's a good story by one of my rivals, Patrick Anderson, of the Province Journal, about some kind of side deal with when the sports betting went to IGT, about whether they had to upgrade it or not now. I think what you're seeing here is this is one of those. I admit, even as a reporter, I find the way we've structured our lottery contracts and the constitutional ways you have to push everything through 5 different layers to get it done, it's very Byzantine, and it can get obscure. And I think what you're seeing here is, as this suddenly gets a lot more attention, I think you're going to start to see the onion peeled, and people are going to say, wait, who does that? And how much money is over there? And what is this agreement? And all that.
So the governor makes, very quietly, a renewal deal with them, which needs
legislative approval.
She feels like she's got to rush it in a special session, which I find intriguing.
There was talk. One thing I know is there was talk in recent months, quietly, about was IGT considering a move? Because they could be in other states, and there might be another state that would offer them some kind of similar deal. We'll give you this contract if you move a big headquarters down here and have a bunch of employment.
You're not talking about contractual business. You're talking about location.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Where they sit.
And I think that was one of the, there's the piece of what they actually do. You do need to figure out the future of the lottery and gaming services. And people have to remember, this is the 3rd biggest source of revenue in Rhode Island after the personal income tax and the sales tax.
It's the number 1 non-tax source.
$400 million a year for the state budget and growing. And so this is a very important, whoever does this, doing it well is very important. And then on top of that, it is a fairly large employer in the state, over 1,000 jobs.
And Twin River is saying, foul.
Yeah, so it's to me as a business and politics reporter, this is fascinating to me because you have so many.
Because it's fascinating, because I just looked at the clock and went, oh, we ought to pause or we'll never catch up on the show. How fascinating Twin Rivers' approach is on this from Ted, and when we come back. Stay with us. So anyway, this is the headline that you saw in the last segment. To follow up, if you just joined us, go back to the podcast or the online. If you miss a show, I can't go backwards. Just can't have it. But you can always watch the show on foxprovidence.com. But we were talking about IGT, its renewal for its lottery and casino business, which is one of the same, and Twin River saying, hey, what's going on here? Full page ads, da-da-da, ba-da-ba. We're gonna have to get them in here to talk about it. What's their angle?
Well, it's fascinating. So Twin River,
they don't make these machines.
They don't make these machines. IGT actually develops and makes the technology of these gambling machines. Twin River runs venues, right? Like the music and the events and who's going, all that. But now Twin River has hired, it's interesting, Mark Crisafulli, a fairly prominent lawyer, business guy in Rhode Island, who was for years a senior IGT/GTech person. He's gone to Twin River. And it looks like part of his portfolio there is, let's see if we can get the IGT contract over to Twin River and sort of turn Twin River, which remember just went on the stock market and is now publicly traded, turn us into also a tech gaming company. And so they've now come in, they made a run at the contract behind the scenes, we now know, in April and May, and now they're doing this big, as you said, Dan, public campaign to tear down the proposed IGT deal.
Well, they actually met with the competitor/partner, because IGT is a partner in the sense that they're commissioned to run IGT's machines for the lottery and the state of Rhode Island's benefit. They met with them and kind of say, hey,
let's do this together.
We're going to cut. It's very movie-like, I would say.
Yeah.
I think it's very theatrical, it seems to me, what was going on there. The governor's in a tough spot. There's going to be a lot of this, transparency, blah, 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 from the General Assembly, all feigned. But I would want to see from Twin River, what is your experience in this business? I can't Deloitte this, man.
Well, it's funny. That's something.
Look, you don't like IGT's deal? We could try to nibble at it at the seam, at the edges, but they know how to do this. No one's ever complained that the lottery blew up.
Right, and I've asked Twin River, and I haven't gotten it yet. Hopefully they do this, but I've said, can you give us a direct comparison, point by point, of whatever IGT is offering in its proposed deal to what Twin River would be offering,
and what your capability
including
is.
how are you just going to turn around and hire IGT to do their own machine that they do now? It's, you know, it's funny because absolutely the IGT deal needs a lot of scrutiny, a lot of money on the line, political connections up the wazoo.
You just said something really brilliant, by the way. If what they're trying to do is actually get a bigger cut of the action by obtaining the contract to do these machines and then turning right back to IGT saying, hey, listen, you want to do them?
Yeah.
And then it's just another way of saying, hey, listen, we need 10%.
Well,
or we
right.
need 15% of this, which is what maybe they ought to just ask that. Then there's the question of bidding. And with only a few companies in the world that do it, and having a homegrown player, I'm not ready to go after the governor on this one and say, oh, it's inside dealing, it's cheating. If I was the governor, I like those jobs, I like their presence.
It's making money. And I think that was their view. They're like, one of the governor's aides said to me, wait a minute, Ted, so you guys are saying we do a public bidding process, we yank this big contract from a Rhode Island-based company and give it to Scientific Games, somebody out in Nevada, they close down Taylor's jobs, that's going to be popular either in Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Now, of course, Twin River would say, no, don't do that, give it to us, and then we're going to figure out how to get into the
Give
tech
it to us,
space.
and we'll give it to them.
It's
because they don't have any. Where's their engineering department
Right.
to develop these machines? So they're going to contract with one of those big threes.
right.
Crazy. All right. It's really a fascinating. We're going to try to get leadership from both entities on about this one. You always say it, and you always try it. CNBC ranking.
Back to last. Pretty depressing, I would say, both for residents and I would say for leaders in the state who, whether you agree or disagree with their approach, have certainly spent a lot of time trying to improve Rhode Island's business climate in their preferred ways the last couple of years. One thing that I do think is important to note, there is a data lag because Rhode Island's still getting destroyed on infrastructure, even though we also know Rhode Island's spending a huge amount of money right now on infrastructure. It may be partly, I'm not saying Rhode Island would zoom to 25th, but it might be once a few more years are in there that the bridges don't look quite as bad and everything. But look, it's not good. You don't want to be last. Massachusetts is up at, I want to say they were 14th or so.
Here's the thing. The challenge I think that anybody who runs the state needs to grasp is whether or not you mount a campaign against this kind of data listing as faulty in its structure and concept from the get-go. If you're not smart enough, the Rhode Island administration has not been smart enough to at least lay the groundwork for years. Not unlike a Trump-like version of fake news, fake polling, fake data, fake thought process, fake systems, fake analysis. Because we're never going to. These things are not going to bump.
Well,
they bump to 45, to 44, but they're never going to surge.
Well,
we're just not built that
The
way.
worry is that I think what you can take away is the Rhode Island economy remains notably weak. You have not had this takeoff of growth like you would hope to see. And I think that's part of what's hurting the state. The economy is just not growing very fast and around. It's not shrinking. There's not a recession, but it's not.
Well,
not
the
going great
Blackstone
guns.
Valley is receding, and South County is beating it to a pulp, and so we have an internal migration of economy in the state that I think is probably worth checking out. But living and dying by CNBC polls is never going to be anybody's best thing. By the way, you did some good work on the tolls last week.
Yeah.
Speaking of data,
keeping track on this one, $7 million
ahead of cash
in the
flow.
first year, slightly ahead of what they thought. They're now installing the third location. They expect to have 12 of them up and running by next spring. There are still legal things out there. The people who hate the truck tolls hate them as much, either way. But I think this does speak to the fact that at least for now, you don't see any sign that trucks are taking crazy new routes to get around the toll.
Not yet.
Not yet. Now, of course, you also got to point out that $7 million is coming from somewhere. So we might be seeing a tick up in the cost of goods and everything. But at least for the cash coming in that was promised, it is coming in.
I don't think you'll see the kind of alternative travel plans on the part of the trucks unless and until we have a full system, number one. And I promise you, this is only going to end to the inevitability in our working lifetime of those tolls being proposed for everybody once they're up. I mean, I still can't. I think Alviti and the DOT has done a pretty good job with a restructuring plan, with this 10-year evolving plan. That toll thing is less than 10% of the total roadworks program. Mm-hmm. And its economic distress could be a whole lot more when it's fully up. But to suggest that, well, here's the proof, we're on our way. Are they saying that? Here's the proof, we're on our way? We're ahead on 3?
Yeah, they're saying, these went the way we expected, so we would expect the next 10 to go the way we expected too.
Yeah, I'm not sure that data makes any sense. All right, when we come back, the conversation of the week in the Providence schools. Stay with us. Kind of short on time, but this now is a state matter. I find it really, really interesting with the new education commissioner so hyper-focused on the Providence schools. There's likely going to have to be some restructure statutorily if she's really going to be in a place where she can enforce. And then, of course, she's this commissioner for the entire state, right? Mm-hmm. And her hire of Victor Capillon from Central Falls is obviously I need someone I can trust hire, but he has not shown me any change agency disposition in Central Falls of any magnificent kind. What's your take on the state dynamic of the Providence schools?
I mean, it feels like the rollout of this is only getting bigger, right? The level of the rhetoric about how bad the schools are in Providence, but we now need what's going to be doing? What is the plan? Which is expected in the next couple weeks. I think, will there be some kind of state-appointed quasi-superintendent? Because clearly, as you say, the ed commissioner herself cannot run the Providence schools day-to-day while being the entire state of Rhode Island's ed commissioner. On the other hand, it is true that this is by far your biggest school district and it's deeply troubled. So, to some extent, this is the ball game in a lot of ways. Most
Rhode Islanders don't want to admit it's Providence goes, so goes Rhode Island, but it does.
Absolutely, it's a city-state. We are a city-state. People don't like hearing that, but it's absolutely true. Outside of Rhode Island, they don't make a big distinction between the city of Providence proper and the state.
Jorge Alorza continues to lie over the idea that he called for this study. He didn't. She has confirmed that he didn't. So he's an outlier, trying to say, well, I know, we're not equipped, and I don't want the state to take over. But in a way that's comfortable for me, and blah, blah, blah. How he is moved aside in this process is going to be a finesse job.
Yes, and I mean, you have to think Alorza and his political advisor are looking at this. He wants to run for governor in 2022.
Yeah, he's dead man walking.
He's taking on a lot of water, I think, right now, if he wants to be...
Difference between commentator and journalist. Dead man walking, taking on a lot of water. No, seriously.
It's a fine line, but we find it.
He's in trouble.
I just think, now, hey, if there's a big turnaround, it looks like he was a partner.
There's no history of a mayor of the city becoming the governor.
This is true. Ask Governor Cicilline, Governor Romer, the long list.
Yeah, Mayor Shancy.
Exactly.
God rest him. Going to be a fascinating next few weeks, though, educationally in the state.
Absolutely, and potentially a really impactful one for a long time that'll affect Rhode Island for a long time. And that's the thing; these kids are the future workforce of the state.
Yes.
So
they cannot be disposed of.
Exactly, they're not going anywhere.
Citizens are not, unfortunately, for your politics. Thanks, Ted.
Final
word next. Jay, as Ted and I were talking about, this Providence school thing is going to have to be something that the entire state shows interest in, because the entire state invests in it, and we are going to spend a goodly amount of time talking about it in the days and weeks ahead during this hot, hot summer. Get ready for the weekend, because for those of you who are waiting for summer, it be coming. See ya.